Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and this is the Rudy Giuliani Show on Mr. Pillow's TV. My friend Mike, LindellTV. I spent the weekend with Mike, and I got to tell you, I know you see him doing the ads, and you see him fighting for us, for the Republic, and fighting for uh, fair elections. And God, the guy has given his soul to that. But you never met a nicer, funnier, just great guy to be with, and just a total patriot. And of course, he's been through hell and appreciates where he is. And the way they picture in the media picture, I tell you what, I go back to the old days of television with the pitchmen, uh, Crazy Eddie's. If you aren't from New York, maybe you don't know Crazy Eddie. But Crazy Eddie, they had this pitchman, and it would be like act like he was insane. Crazy Eddie has great sales today. You can get this. He is a sophisticated version of those guys. I call him, and you will not understand this reference, the Arthur Godfrey of modern media. Arthur Godfrey had his own show, one of the biggest shows on television. It was a morning show. It appealed really to women. My grandmother loved Arthur Godfrey. I mean, she was a widowed Italian woman. Her husband died in 1925. And I don't think she even thought of another man after that. Or if she did, she went to confession. And she just loved Arthur Godfrey. But he used to do his own ads as well as this morning show where he had guests. And then he went down to Miami. He sort of built Miami. All these people found out about Miami because of Arthur Godfrey. Well, in any event, we've got an incredibly big meeting coming up. When I say all you people, whether this is tense or not, and it is, are living through history. This is going to be a very, very much written about period of time, and the outcome of it is by no means certain. And you're in the middle of it. Observing it, but also based on public opinion, having an impact on it, one way or the other. I mean, those of you who voted for Trump created it. None of this would be happening now. Ukraine, Putin might have had the rest of Ukraine if Biden kept holding back arms from Zelensky, and he would have sold. He was trying the worst way to sell out Israel, and Bibi just wouldn't let him. But at some point, Biden would have prevailed because America is much stronger, really, than it is Israel. Although I wouldn't guarantee that. Bibi is such an independent character and such a patriot. He's a patriot of the United States and Israel. You don't realize that. He loves our country. Pretty much grew up here. But Trump has made this now a turning point for us. And Friday is going to be one hell of a meeting. Now, according to the reports from Russia, very, very high expectations in Russia. So there was a period of time when Russia had high expectations of Trump. They believed, some of the Russian collusion stuff. And after all, the Times and the Washington Post and all of these crooked journalists got Pulitzer Prizes for it. Some of the Russians believed it, that he was favorable to Russia. Then we had 4 years in which, if anything, he was much tougher on Russia than Obama or Biden. Some say to compensate for the criticism. I say because it was necessary. But in any event, the end result was that their expectations not only weren't met, but they were confronted with a much more difficult adversary, if you want to call that. I mean, we don't think of ourselves. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But in any event, it didn't work out that Russia got everything. Russia got much bigger sanctions. That's all. Then again, with his victory now, they expected he would just let them do anything they wanted in Ukraine and let them do anything they wanted anywhere. And instead, they've had, although not the killer sanctions yet, an increase in sanctions. And now this restriction on India, Like, secondary sanctions really would crush Russia. That means somebody can't buy Russian oil and sell it. So that now applies to India, and they buy 30% of the Russian oil. One third of a market is a very, very significant number. And now we're going to do everything we can to block that. That has already dropped the price of Russian oil. And Russia is selling oil to China at a bargain rate and to India, a rate in which they do not make their usual margin of profit. So already there's an impact on the revenues to Russia. If the whole thing goes into effect, it'll crush Russia. And the press doesn't realize it because they're too stupid to read, think, or analyze. All they do is emote in their hatred of Trump. And but Putin realizes it, and Trump realizes it, which is why he's been reluctant to do it. I mean, there are a whole group of other issues that have to be negotiated with Russia, and that's the point that Dmitriev makes. Dmitriev is probably one of the key advisors to Putin, who's developed sort of a friendly relationship with the U.S. He's considered to be a friend of ours in the Putin court. Now, how true that is, I take that with a grain of salt. But Dmitriev now predicts in a few statements that he's made that this will be a very, very valuable summit, and the U.S. and Russia will emerge as much as in many ways on certain issues partners. And what that means, I talk to you always straight, right? That means selling out Ukraine, 'cause that's what they want us to do. What every one of their proposals so far has been a total sellout of Ukraine. Well, we're gonna talk to Kara Castanova about this and a group of other things, from the White House. So let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk to our White House correspondent, the wonderful and absolutely brilliant Kara Castanova. We'll be right back.
Let's face it, you can't trust Big Pharma. They've already tried to block ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and raise prices on everything from antibiotics to your daily meds. Well, there's good news. All Family Pharmacy is standing up for medical freedom and helping people get the treatments they actually want. My family and I use them all the time. They made it easy and affordable without the runaround. While other pharmacies are jacking up prices, they've actually dropped theirs. Ivermectin now starts at just $2 a capsule. Use my promo code LindellTV, you get an extra 10% off of that. You need ivermectin, antibiotics, or methylene blue, you name it, they've got it. They make it simple. You fill out a short online form, a licensed doctor reviews it, your meds ship fast right to your front door. If you want to be prepared and have your medications on hand, this is your new pharmacy. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10 saves you even more. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10.
Well, I told you we'd come back with Kara Castanova. We'll get her in a minute from Washington and from the White House. I would imagine, having been in several White Houses, well, mostly Reagan and Trump's, and in and out of Clinton's a bit, although, then I wasn't really the enemy in those days. I was a mayor he worked with. It was a little different back then. But right now, although there are lots of things going on, and Trump is not like that. I mean, Trump can do 5 things at once. But a lot of the White House is pointed toward Friday. It's too big a meeting not to take up a lot of the air in the room. It is, if you want to put it in historical context, and who knows, it could flame out and not be worth much. But going in, this is about as big a meeting between the United States and Russia as we have had since it was the Soviet Union. I'd say you got to go back to Gorbachev and Reagan for similar high stakes meetings. Reykjavik in Iceland being the one over nuclear armaments, but then eventually about Star Wars. And I saw someone describe it as a enormously successful meeting for Ronald Reagan. Well, this is a person that forgot his history. It was. 9 months later, remember, it crashed and burned. Reagan walked out before the celebratory dinner because at the last minute, Gorbachev put an issue on the table that was not supposed to be on the table, was not supposed to be part of the negotiations. But he said, okay, I'll do all these arms reductions, which would have, in fact, had an impact on Russia even more than the US, the way they were structured. But he said, since I'm doing that, I want you to just get rid of this Star Wars thing. It's stupid anyway. Well, of course, he wanted him to get rid of it because it wasn't stupid, because Russia couldn't keep up with it. Russia couldn't afford it. Russia didn't have the technology for it. Despite their best efforts at spying, they couldn't get any intelligence on it. And when he said, you got to give up Star Wars, most of his people figured, oh, yeah, we don't even have it. It's going to take years. And Reagan said, well, thank you, Mr. I think he called him Mr. Gorbachev. Thank you, Mr. Gorbachev. It's been a really wonderful meeting. I'm going back to the White House. He walked up, stood up. His aides didn't know what to do. And he went and got his car and went to the airplane. And Mrs. Reagan was sitting in her office in the White House. And her chief of staff walked in and said, Mrs. Reagan, the president's coming home tonight. She said, no, honey, you're mistaken. He's coming home tomorrow night. They're having a big dinner tonight to celebrate the agreement. She said, there is no agreement. He walked out. And then he called her from the airplane and said, honey, please don't be angry at me. And she said, Ronnie, you got here because your political knowledge, instincts, and judgment is better than anybody else. And it's better than mine. So I'm with you 100%. And 9 months later, Gorbachev caved, agreed to everything, didn't put restrictions on Star Wars. Hence, you have the Iron Dome. Wouldn't have had it without that. Acknowledged by a letter from Bibi to Mrs. Reagan, thanking him posthumously for sticking with it, because otherwise they certainly wouldn't have had an Iron Dome. So do we have Kara yet?
I'm here.
Hello, Kara, how are you?
I'm good. I missed you. How are you doing?
All right. So tell us what's going on in the White House.
Well, as you know, President Trump is meeting with Putin on Friday in Alaska. That's a very quick trip, or else we would have joined very much an in and out trip. Not really sure yet if they'll be doing a bilateral press conference where people could actually ask Putin questions, because I certainly have some questions for Putin. So that is on Friday. We're actually in the press pool on Thursday, LindellTV. So that should be exciting. The president will be receiving an intelligence report, hopefully signing some executive orders that are open to the press pool so we could be in there and ask the important questions, obviously, Mr. Mayor. Today, there was a press briefing with Carolyn Levitt. I would love to share some of those clips with you, but I know that we can't do that today, unfortunately, but another day maybe, just because of issues, I guess, within certain things, but it's fine. I could perfectly describe to you, just like Carolyn would, what was said. And something I think that's important to you, obviously, which is accountability for Democrats that for so long tried to really hurt President Trump in his first term, like Adam Schiff, obviously. So I'm not sure if you heard about the blockbuster bombshell whistleblower report that came out. A Democrat, a longtime Democrat staffer at the White, that was, I believe, on the Intelligence Committee, claims that Senator Adam Schiff not only approved but actively encouraged the leaking of classified intelligence to damage President Trump. And this whistleblower told the FBI that Schiff's actions were deliberate, coordinated, and politically motivated, with the goal of pushing a narrative that would lead to President Trump's indictment. And in other words, Mr. Mayor, part of a political operation critics are now describing as an attempted coup from inside Congress. These are the four charges that legal experts are saying, if all this turns out to be true and proven: unauthorized disclosure of classified national defense information, conspiracy to defraud the United States by misusing intelligence authorities, and obstruction of justice by manipulating investigative processes through selective leaks, and last but not least, depriving the rights of color under law if political targeting is proven. So what are your thoughts? Will Schiff be held accountable, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I never like to predict grand juries, but the wealth of evidence against Schiff has been there for 5 years. I never understood why he hasn't been prosecuted up until now from the time that he said, I have this information of and evidence and witnesses of Trump's direct involvement in Russian collusion. Of course, after 3 investigations and $80 million, the federal government figured out there was no Trump involvement in Russian collusion. There was no Trump staff involved, and there was no Russian collusion. And no one has forced him to produce what he said he could produce, which would have been a conspiracy to defraud the United States if you proved it. Plus, he was careless enough to make those statements outside of the halls of Congress. So when I would raise this, people would say, well, he has congressional immunity. No, he doesn't. Not for doing it on Meet the Press, he doesn't. And some of the others were very careful to make their lying remarks in front of Congress, but he wasn't. So this is just added evidence. The mortgage case against him sounds pretty damn strong also.
Right.
I mean, he's both a, you know, you're a New Yorker, you know what a schnorrer is? That's a Yiddish word for a low-level, cheap little crook that'll steal $5 from an old lady.
Right.
I mean, he's a big liar and a small liar.
Right.
And I don't know. I can't be sure, but I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get indicted. Very surprised.
I would as well. And as you know, he was pardoned for his, alleged crimes as part of the J6 Unselect Committee for lying to the American people. I mean, Joe Biden pardoned him, but he's not pardoned for any of his other actions, including this and including the mortgage fraud. So, these Democrats should be held accountable, obviously. And we're looking forward to that because nobody's above the law, like the Democrats say, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Kara, there's a theory on which you could prosecute him, which is called continuing conspiracy.
Yes.
He's not pardoned for anything that happened after the day of the pardon. And he's continuing to carry this on. So if the government wants to challenge that, they can. They can also challenge whether he was actually pardoned or not.
That's correct.
Did a machine pardon him? Machines, the Constitution doesn't give a machine the right to pardon, only the president.
Right.
So let's see whose signature is on there.
Definitely something that we hope the DOJ will look into. That's why I wish we had 2 attorney generals, because there's so much work. There's so much crime in Washington, D.C., as you know, and not just street crime, obviously deep state swamp creature crime. It's pretty horrific. So, that's the scoop right now on Adam Schiff and holding Democrats accountable. And just a lot of other talk about the federalization of D.C., about the crime here. Benny Johnson was the new media seat today, so he got to ask Carolyn Levitt a question. He basically called out the room of reporters, saying to all you reporters who keep saying that DC is safe, which is absolutely not. I live here. My family was attacked. My house was set on fire by thugs. So Carolyn Levitt obviously addressed all of the concerns that reporters have about what it means to federalize DC. My question is, can the president remove sanctuary city status, really, if he moves forward with federalizing Washington, D.C.? I'm curious about that, because this is a sanctuary city, actually, with more illegal immigrants here taking advantage of government services than actual homeless people, although there are a lot of homeless people here that really need the services, which Carolyn Levitt spoke about as well, about the services that will be hopefully available to these homeless people, homeless shelters and whatnot, to get them out of these tent cities that they're living in here in Washington, D.C.
Well, if he wants to go beyond 30 days of the U.S. government taking over, then he has to get a permission of Congress. Right. Which will be hard because it has to reach that 60-vote margin in the Senate, unless they find some way to exempt that or avoid it. But if you think about it, District of Columbia is a federal enclave, and so the U.S. attorney is actually a U.S. attorney and a district attorney, so she has tremendous power. So the fact is that he can continue using the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute a lot of these crimes. I mean, if I were Janine, I would move a lot of those cases over into the federal court. Like every drug case could be moved into the federal court. And there you don't have all that bail craziness where people go out on bail. You don't have the juvenile issues. It's much stricter.
Right.
It's harder to do in any other place because you got to get cooperation. In other words, if the U.S. attorney in New York wanted to do this, he'd have to get Bragg's permission. Well, she's both Bragg and the U.S. attorney.
Right.
So Janine is in a great position to have a big impact on this, and I think she will. I mean, I'm looking at her, and it's like it's Janine I knew when she was 38 years old and 40 years old. She was a DA when I was the U.S. attorney, and she was damn good.
Right. No, she's great. We see her here almost every day talking to the press. She's definitely powerful and strong. Yesterday, she mentioned at that press briefing with President Trump how a lot of these juvenile delinquency centers, they're doing yoga and arts and crafts. So it's frustrating for her, obviously, as DC attorney to prosecute. There's obviously the fine line between, okay, when is a juvenile an adult? But, sometimes there's these 17-year-old juveniles,
Yes.
we would call them, beating up adults, assaulting women. In the case of Big Balls from Doge, they assaulted him, beat him to a bloody pulp, almost killed him. So really, it's a subject I think that's really should be discussed within this administration when it comes to youngsters here in DC around the age of 16 and 17 and how they should be charged.
Well, Kara, I know you mentioned this earlier, but put on your hat as a person who spends a lot of time in D.C., right? You're there all week, so you're a resident in many ways of D.C. What is it like? How would you evaluate it from the street?
Well, I personally have moved to Arlington, Virginia, where it's much more safe. Obviously, I was first here in DC living in Noma, which is an area that was starting to get a little seedy. I wouldn't want to, as a female, obviously walk around on the street at night by myself. I would not want to take the train. I did take it a few times. I felt myself looking over my shoulder often. There's some deserted areas that don't feel very safe. There's obviously a lot of people sometimes hanging out on the street. And as a female, that just doesn't really feel safe. I don't know from the male perspective what it feels like, but I could just say as a female, there are a lot of parts of Washington, D.C. that I would 100% avoid at all costs. And that's why I moved to Arlington, Virginia, which is much more safe.
Well, having come from New York, you realize that D.C. is quite a bit more dangerous than New York.
Yeah, I would say it's different and similar in ways. To me, New York is familiar. So I know where and where not to go. You know what I'm talking about. We know what to avoid in New York. We're from New York. But in DC, I am new here. I'm not really sure what street corners and what areas are, the places to avoid. So for me, being in New York feels safer than DC just because I'm familiar with it. But being in Washington, DC is very unfamiliar territory for me. So I just generally avoid taking the train at night. I avoid going out by myself, like most common sense people would, I think, if they were a female living here or a male for that matter.
Who experienced the same thing you do. I see some of them actually have supported this. But how do they react to this? They know that this is an emergency situation. So, but their instinct to attack Trump is so great.
Right.
How are they dealing with it personally? Do they ever talk about it?
You mean the other reporters? I think
like
you cut off for a sec.
Reporter, person to person.
Right. Well, I was told a story today by Benny Johnson, who, is a podcaster. He was here at the White House, and he said that a lot of the reporters have told him off the record, if I'm remembering the story well, that they don't feel safe here and they don't want to go get a drink. And there's certain areas that they want to avoid, but they would never say that on camera because it doesn't go with the leftist narrative, obviously. So, they don't feel safe, but obviously the news organizations that they're working for will never allow them to say that, and they'll challenge the president in any way that they can and paint this as unfair. There was a protest outside the White House yesterday of, I'd say about 50 people, maybe less, protesting this order, this federalization order by President Trump, saying that DC is really safe and no crime happens here, which is absolutely ludicrous, obviously.
That is ludicrous.
There's more murders here than there are in, I believe, Bogota. I hope I'm saying that right, Colombia, and other areas of the world that are very unsafe. There's more murders in DC per capita, 100,000 per capita.
I'm going to say per capita, it's 4 or 5 times New York.
I would say you might be right there. I don't have the New York statistics.
New York is 4 or 5 per 100,000, and DC is about 26 or 27. I mean, DC is the 4th or 5th in the country.
Right. It's not. It's definitely not good. It is the 5th. The 5th actually.
Number
after
5, right.
And there, I think. I forget which other cities. It might be Chicago. It might be where Mardi Gras, New Orleans might be one of the more unsafe cities.
New Orleans, possibly St. Louis.
Detroit.
Right.
Detroit.
So, I mean,
DC, for
the president and the federal government, it is their home and the capital. So there is an interest beyond just the citizens of the District of Columbia, even if they don't mind getting killed more than in most other places. But we have our Congress there, we have our federal government there, we have our courts there. So
Right. You have
I hope
all
the
three
Congress
branches.
decides to be responsible and not act politically on this.
Well, there's a chance they might, but as you know, the congressional Democrats love the Capitol Police on January 6th when it comes to their protection.
Yeah,
So if it affects them and if their safety is at risk, then of course they're all for the police. So that's the way President Trump put it yesterday at that press briefing that he did at 10 a.m. It was great. Was that this is where leaders like from all over the world come, literally prime ministers, leaders of the whole world. And if they see DC with graffiti and with crime and where it's just terrible, how does that make the rest of the United States look? How could he make deals? How could he represent the United States when they're coming into DC and, coming into an area where they might be afraid to walk around on the street and get dinner, coming around where what he calls unbeautiful. He wants to beautify Washington, D.C. and make it more, I guess, an acceptable place for these world leaders to visit. I'm sure when he went to the Middle East and was in Saudi Arabia, it was beautiful. That this is the way that they conduct business in other parts of the world. But in
right.
Washington, D.C., the Democrats have really let it go downhill in terms of the way that it looks, in terms of safety. So these are things that are important, I think, to national security, just because this is the place where literally deals are made. This is where the most powerful man in the world resides. Obviously, his surroundings have to reflect that.
Well, it's really true. They're very, 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 very good. And also, your piece on your father was very moving, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you for playing that.
Congratulations. I urge people to see it. It was quite beautiful. God bless you.
Thank you.
Great job.
God bless you too. God
And
bless
be
you too,
careful.
Mr. Mayor. You too,
Be
Mr.
careful.
Mayor. Okay, I'll see you soon.
I remember when I first went to DC, Ted, in the 1974, 75, it had a tremendous amount of crime. And we had programs in the Justice Department to teach our women employees how to defend themselves. We brought in martial arts experts. I remember going to several of the sessions to observe them. And we also had a rule, as law firms did then, that you were allowed to take a taxi and reimbursed if you had to stay beyond a certain hour, like whenever dark was, 6 or 7, for women. Now you would say that was probably now illegal or discriminatory or against men or something like that, but nobody ever felt that way back then. We sort of thought we could take care of ourselves. But that's when we had a large number of people, a large number of men who thought they could take care of themselves and probably could. I don't know what's happened with this new generation.
That's right, Mayor.
Although we have seen some that do, like Big Balls, who earned his name in every respect by protecting the young lady he was with. Boy, my father would be so proud of Big Balls.
Well, that's right, Mayor. And I mean, you talk about these courses you did at the Department of Justice. I mean, you have some boxing experience. Maybe you were involved with some of the training.
The lady we were talking to was a champion boxer.
That's right. That's right. So
I wouldn't mug her. I think one jab might bust your jaw open.
Right. I'm going to ask Kara.
People don't realize that Kara is one hell of a boxer.
She's going to escort us out of the White House after hours.
I would say I wouldn't mind walking with her.
Yeah. She's going to protect me.
I think she can handle herself. What a surprise it would be for these punks.
Yeah, go after Kara. Wrong person.
Kara, I mean, I've seen pictures. I've never saw her box live, but I've seen videos. She's got a very good jab.
Oh, yeah.
And the jab is a very, very difficult punch to protect yourself from. And these guys are not, really. I mean, a lot of them are big bullies. A little blood, and they'll start crying. And Kara could certainly inflict a little blood.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But in any event, I don't understand how President Trump is now elected, right? He can't run again for re-election. The next election is a long way off. What the heck are we thinking about whether to give him victories or not, if they're good for the country and good for yourself as a citizen going back and forth to work? This is where we become so politicized. It's a reflection of our ignorance rather than anything else. There's no reason to not work with him to come to a solution that reduces the danger to the people in the District of Columbia. That's not going to elect J.D. Vance or Rubio or whoever runs after him, or not elect them. It's going to have right now at this point, not going to have any bearing on the next election at all, or even the midterm elections. There used to be a time in which people acted bipartisan up until maybe a couple of weeks or months before the election. Then I remember a period of time, I don't know exactly when it started and when it ended, but maybe in the 90s to the 2000s, and maybe even in the 80s, in that period of time, in which the first year you could get things done because people would act like senators and congressmen and presidents and cabinet members. Then when you went into the next year, which would be the off-year election year and the congressional election year, things started to get political, and then it became harder to do the bipartisan things. Then there was the election, and then you got another 12, 14 months of being able to do government. That's gone now. Certainly, I would say, if I'm tracing it, starting with when the Democrats turned on Bush, after September 11, after supporting him, there was a realization, I think, among them that if they supported him too much, they're going to just reelect him. And then they decided to oppose him on everything, whether it was good for America or not. And then they took it to an insane level with Trump. And it hasn't been the same since then. And a lot of the things that happen are completely incomprehensible, since they have to live here too. And their staffers get beaten up and killed and raped just as much as the Republican staffers, but they don't seem to give a damn. So this takeover of Washington strictly has 30 days. After 30 days, the president has to go to Congress and ask for their permission to exercise these powers over the District of Columbia. I don't understand why that is necessary, and it may very well be unconstitutional, since this is federal, Washington, D.C. When I say this is, we're not in Washington, D.C. It is a federal enclave. It is a federal property. And ultimately, he should have the ability to make the final decisions about it. But there is a law that was passed that, unless you get it declared unconstitutional, has to be followed. So let's see what happens, and let's see if this period of time doesn't result in a reduction. According to the reports from Russia, Russia has very, very high expectations for this summit. They believe that there are, as Russian commentators have said, much more important global issues to negotiate than Ukraine. And that if those global issues are put on the table, there are so many things that Russia and the United States can do that would be favorable for both, particularly the United States. It isn't worth sacrificing that. This is the Russian viewpoint over Ukraine. And the Russians believe, or put out that they believe, and this comes from Alexandra Prokopenko, who is with the Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center and a former advisor to the Russian Central Bank. They believe that with just a little more pressure, the Ukrainian front will collapse. And they also believe that, because right now he's making all his progress, if you can call it progress, on the ground. I would think that's going to be rejected. I think the president, at a minimum, is looking for a ceasefire out of this, complete ceasefire. Like, stop fighting, stop killing each other on the ground or in the air. And I think if he doesn't get that, then the thing crashes. We have another Reykjavik, and the president leaves without doing anything. I think the bigger issue is if you get beyond that, and they are interested in a ceasefire and ending the war, and they are willing to trade territory, not just keep everything they have and add another third onto it. That is the parts that remain in 3 of the 4 provinces that they've captured, but only one of them have they captured 100% of it. And they want Ukraine to give them what they haven't captured, as well as give nothing back, as well as no real defense for Ukraine. But that can't happen. That can't happen. I mean, then, and I think even if we agree to it, Ukraine wouldn't, and Europe would. So Russia's got to be willing to give up some meaningful things in order to get an agreement and peace. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. I don't see the president agreeing to it. There is fear that he will, because he wants an agreement so bad, say his critics. I don't believe that's true. But even if that is true, there's only a certain amount he can force. It still has to be agreed to by Zelensky and to some extent by the Europeans. And I don't see them giving Russia everything that it wants. I think you've got 3 camps on the opposite side of Russia. You've got the Zelensky camp that says, or at least starts with, we should not give Russia any of our territory. That's what we've been fighting about. How would you feel if you had to give up New York or California or New Jersey, or let me pick Florida as a Republican state? How would you feel if you had to do that? Oh, you can keep Texas, but you got to give up Florida. That's Zelensky's point of view. No territory. We're not going to give them any territory. Well, if they don't give them territory, I don't know what they can give them. So what's Ukraine putting on the table for an agreement? So that's a little unrealistic, but maybe it's a negotiating position. I mean, the Russian position is totally unrealistic. That Ukrainian position is unrealistic. But you go into a negotiation with unrealistic positions. The question is, are you going to move off them? And there's a lot of skepticism that Putin's offer is his first and final offer, which is, I want everything. Now, the Europeans, there's a little more softness with the Europeans. A little more softness on Zelensky's position. The Europeans, although they say Russia should not be able to gain anything by illegal warfare, by killing civilians, by doing the things that they've done, they shouldn't be allowed to keep any of that territory. It all should be given back to Ukraine. You do hear them say that there could be swaps, trades that could be beneficial and that could work out. Exactly what they have in mind, I don't know. I have my own theory about what has to be done and could be done. But that would create some flexibility for trading. And I would say that's where the White House is, and probably on a scale of don't give Russia too much to the people that are willing to give Russia a lot more. There are probably also people in the State Department and the White House that would let Russia keep everything. I don't think there's anybody in Europe like that. And I think there are people in the White House. Well, I'm not sure of this. If there are any that would go so far as to say, not only can Russia keep everything, but they can get that extra amount of land that they weren't able to take in 3 of the 4 oblast provinces that they conducted war. I think that's a much more limited position. And I think even Russia has that there for negotiating purposes. So that's the land part. This doesn't work unless there's some trading of land. I don't see how Russia agrees to just give everything back that they conquered, nor do I see Ukraine agreeing to let them keep everything they conquered. both are saying they're not going to negotiate at all. I have a suspicion both will be willing to compromise. I think the tougher issue becomes security for Ukraine. Ukraine has to be able to set up some reasonable defense against the possibility that they will be that in some short period of time Russia will attack them again. So they can't be required to give up their defenses in order to really be defended against it's happening again. They have got to be able to call upon Europe, which means there has to be a prospect of their being accepted in NATO. And I think that's going to be tough for Putin. But I think it's going to be very necessary to end this, that they be allowed to join NATO and therefore be defended. Well, those are the issues they're going to negotiate, and we'll have to see how it comes out. And the winner or loser will be decided on points. How many of those points do you get? How many of those points do you lose? Well, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com. Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Welcome back to the Rudy Giuliani Show. And that was a very interesting conversation with Kara. I think her perspective on this is absolutely right. And of course, it's valuable because right now she's living in the District of Columbia and she's telling you straight out the damn place is dangerous. And why the Democrats are pretending it isn't. I mean, all you have to do, the fact that crime is down in some categories from last year, when in fact there's a 5-time greater chance of being killed in the District of Columbia than New York or Nairobi. What does that matter? I remember when my predecessor, David Dinkins, who had 2,400 murders, got it down to 2,200 murders and had a celebration. That's absurd. So the level of crime, the District of Columbia should not be the 5th most dangerous city in America. That means almost every other city in America is safer than our nation's capital, including legendary crime cities like my old one, New York. New York is quite a bit safer than the District of Columbia. in almost every respect, including property crime. So the president is acting in the best interests of the people, and the Democrats are acting not to give him a victory, even when he's saving lives. Now, what the heck is that all about? Except the fact that they've become non-human. I mean, they know that their staff is frightened like hell to go home after dark. I mean, every member of Congress and every member of the Senate, a member of the House and the Senate knows that.
That's right, Mayor, and that's what's so bizarre. I'm willing to bet there's a number of Democrat staffers in Washington who have probably been beat up or accosted, and they'd rather hide that fact and bury it than get it out there because of the perceived
Yeah, and
political.
if you worked with Trump on this, how would that change things politically all that much? I mean, they're still going to oppose him on everything else.
Right, and so it'll be interesting to see what
And
this.
what kind of victory? I mean, so it's a small victory for Trump, but it's a big victory for the people of the District of Columbia.
Right, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. So I guess it's 30 days where the National Guard can be deployed on the streets, and the police department is temporarily, I don't know if takeover is a word, but put under the authority of the federal government. And it's funny, right? Last night, shootings aren't funny, but it was interesting to see that as soon as this was put into effect, we had a shooting last night in Washington.
Well, you've got, if my numbers are correct, 9 out of every 100,000 in New York, 28 out of every 100,000 in Washington are killed, are shot. That's shootings, something like that. What's that? 3 times. So if you walk out on the street in New York or Washington, in Washington, there's a 3-time greater chance you're going to be shot and killed.
That's right, Mayor. In 2024, this is the homicide rate, not the shooting. But in D.C., 27.3 per 100,000. In New York, 5.3.
Oh, even less.
I mean, that's over 5 times.
That's even less. And that was when? What year?
2024.
And 25 shootings are down in New York to pretty close to a record low. Shootings are down in District of Columbia just a little bit. So that gap is easily the same and may have gotten worse. And then,
right.
Then let's take New York out for a minute, where people are afraid. But you've got a 4, 5, 6 times greater chance of being killed in the District of Columbia. All but 4 American cities are safer than the District of Columbia. Now, why shouldn't the Democrats want the president to take over, or the federal authorities to take over? Because obviously things are not happening fast enough or well enough. It makes no sense unless you like to see people get killed, like they do in Chicago. They haven't done a damn thing about Chicago in 70 years. Every weekend is still a shooting gallery.
That's right, Mayor. And we talked about this last night, but what is your take on what, these Democrats say, for example, the mayor of DC last night said, well, she thinks the president is, just thinking of how DC was during COVID. And she blames COVID for all these problems.
I don't even
and
know what she was
increase
talking about.
Right.
He thinks DC is like it was how was DC during COVID? It was empty.
Right. Well, it was empty, but the point being,
it was like it was like a city after the Nazis took over, occupied it and stuck everybody inside and pulled the Jews out and killed them.
But COVID didn't cause the summer of love, right? COVID didn't cause those riots. I mean, you were infected with COVID. It didn't cause you to start creating violence.
No, the exaggeration and falsifications about the murder in Minneapolis caused it.
Right. Right. Yeah. The George Floyd.
George Floyd, the guy who has a statue to him.
Yes.
Even though he was a consistent woman beater, a drug addict.
And there are very serious questions surrounding the actual cause of his death.
You want your child to be like.
Right.
And he's become a hero to the criminals.
That's right, Mayor.
Well, there is an article in Russia, in the Russian press. The theory is that why are they making a big deal of negotiating this? Because Russia's already won. Now, Paul, I'm going to Schwensenson in Reason magazine has argued that Ukraine has won. That Ukraine has won basically most of the world. That they stopped Russia from accomplishing their real goal, which is to take Ukraine. Even if they get what they want, they're going to have less than a third of Ukraine. And they're going to have about a third of the valuable part, the minerals. They shouldn't get what they want. They should have to give back at least half of that, at least half of what they took, and at least half of the valuable land. And we know where the valuable land is. So we shouldn't be fooled with, you're going to get the garbage. But according to Schwensenson, who's just been there for about 6 weeks, the spirit of the Ukrainian people is very, very high. The spirit of resistance is higher than it's ever been. After all these years of war, they're willing to keep going if Russia's going to take a piece of them. They'd rather die, which is the mark of great revolutionaries. Their life is not as important as freedom for their children. We've got that going on in Ukraine. I'm not saying every Ukrainian, but that's a prevailing feeling in Ukraine. And from the limited information that I get, both from the MEK and the people I talk to there, including the people that I met at the Hoover Dam, who just happened to be from Ukraine on vacation, that's a correct interpretation.
That's right,
of
Mayor.
people who feel if we just hold out long enough, we can get rid of the Russians. Meanwhile, the Russians are tired of it. They're tired of it. They don't want it anymore. Who knows how many of them wanted it in the first place? There was no overriding reason for Russia to take Ukraine. Ukraine wasn't going to attack them. If Ukraine joined NATO, it would just be one more country that Russia can't invade. Why does Russia want them out of NATO? Because it wants the option to invade them anytime they want. That's not exactly a position that's going to inspire your people to die. And right now, I would say morale in Ukraine is the highest it's been, and morale in Russia is about as low as it can possibly be, except for Putin and the people that he directly dominates. I can't imagine that too many Russians really think that it's in the best interest of Russia to continue to acquire more Ukrainian land. If anything, they've destroyed so many alliances of theirs. They've caused themselves such economic damage that the typical Russian at home says to himself, okay, suppose we get Ukraine. How does that change my life?
Right.
If we get Ukraine, we have Europe that's going to hate us from now on.
That's right, Mayor. So before we go, the White House today again confirming that the president will be meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in a one-on-one meeting to take place in Anchorage.
In Anchorage.
So here we have a map.
Well, that's further north. That's not on the.
Oh,
there it is.
No,
there,
Anchorage
there it
is right down there. So we'll take it. So this is
no,
a
it's
map, and
actually
you can
south.
see just
It's
how
south of Fairbanks.
just see how close our two countries truly are. The White House saying that only one party that is involved in the war is going to be present. Of course, that being Russia. So confirming that Ukraine will not be involved.
Well, that is a bit of a concession. Two theories, right? One theory is that there are two separate. This is the Russian theory. Two separate issues. One of those issues is the war, but the more important one are the global issues between the United States and Russia. Because really, what Putin wants to do is to make enticing concessions on those global issues, so that Trump allows him to have his way with Ukraine. That's his strategy. The American strategy is not to decouple them. They both have to come together. So we're going to have to see how that works out. Not having Zelensky at the meeting at all kind of plays into the Russian format, not the American. But it doesn't have to if we remain very, very firm. I mean, there's no doubt there's a good reason for Trump and Zelensky, Trump and Putin to meet alone. Zelensky doesn't have to be part of our bilateral relationship and shouldn't be. But there's also a good reason for Zelensky to be part of what happens with Ukraine, because we're not going to sell it unless the Ukrainian people agree to it. Well, I want you guys to go over to X right now at 8 o'clock. We're going to continue this discussion, and then there's plenty more. There's plenty more to discuss about Israel and what's going on there, and about the crime problems in other places, including in New York, and the insane mayor's race in New York with a communist running for mayor. So you go over to X at 8 o'clock, and which is a few minutes from now, and we'll continue this discussion. God bless you, and God bless America.